This is another one of those videos where I bring you along on a photo shoot. This is going to be pretty short. What I'm going to talk about and show in this video is slowing your shutter speed so that you can get those kind of blurry waterfall photos. And this can be applied to a variety of effects, but we're going to start right now with this pretty little spot and this pretty little waterfall. And here's an example picture of what I'm talking about. You need a camera, obviously, a camera that you can control your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. Or if you could just control your shutter speed, let the camera do the rest. You're going to need a tripod. You cannot handhold for these kind of pictures. Even with image stabilization, it's just too long and everything's going to be blurry. And really all we want is the water to be blurry. Now, I'm out here right about sunset. And it actually is still a little too light, too much light. It's funny, so many times we go out photographing or we spend so much money on gear that lets us shoot in lower light, and still get good pictures. Now we kind of want the opposite. We want there to be not a whole lot of light. And we actually can use something to help us with that, and it's the circular polarizer. These have a lot of uses, and one of them is basically to act like a sunglass in front of your lens and cut down on the amount of light coming through. You can also use a neutral density filter or a variable neutral density filter. I don't own those. I just don't do enough of the shooting to justify it. There are other uses for those filters, but I just don't do enough of it to justify the cost of the good ones. So we're just going to use the circular polarizer, which is a lot more affordable, and as I said, has a variety of uses. There's a link down below to my blog post. I've gushed about circular polarizers in the past. All right, so this is maybe a little tricky audio-wise as we get closer to the water, but I'm going to bring you over. I'm going to set up the camera and kind of talk through my settings for shooting this waterfall right here. So the light levels have dropped a little bit now, so this is a nice light level. I've got the T5i sitting on a tripod, nicely stabilized, pointed at a waterfall. Let me turn live view on for a second so you can see generally. Now, I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to composition here because I am shooting the back of this camera with another camera, and I lose some of my flexibility in how I can set this camera up in that. But I do want to make sure that you are thinking of composition even when you're taking a long exposure picture. Just because you got this beautiful water streaking through the shot doesn't mean that you should throw out the idea of rules of thirds and things of that sort. So keep that in mind. Now, other quick tips. I am now in manual focus mode. Autofocus is turned off. The image stabilizer is off as well on my 18-135 lens. Whenever you have your camera on a tripod and you have an image stabilized lens, you should have that off. There can be some confusion and collisions there between the gyroscopes and sitting still on a tripod, which can actually negatively affect your image. Now, let's say I've been shooting and I got ISO 800, 1/15 of a second, and f4.5, actually even a little bit crooked. You know, that's a properly exposed image as far as the camera is concerned. So I'm going to take a shot and we see our result there. And you know, you get a little bit of blurring of that water in the background, but nothing that's terribly exciting. Now, a couple of things. First, I'm going to drop my goal here is to get a really long shutter speed. 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, somewhere in there. But we're going to start a little bit smaller and work up to that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my ISO, or just press the ISO button. I'm going to go to 100, and you can see that that's gotten a lot darker now. Now I'm going to rotate my dial to the left, which will bring my shutter speed, which will slow my shutter speed, which brings my exposure up. Now I'm looking at half a second. And my aperture still is sitting at 4.5, which is the widest I could shoot right now. This is one of those times where I really don't. I want to close that aperture down, let in less light, up somewhere around 10, and now again, I'm just going to turn the dial to the left and see my shutter speed, and a half press shows me that at 2.5 seconds, it's now saying that's a properly exposed image. Now, one thing that you want to do when you're shooting without a remote release, and I don't have a remote release, this is a quick tip, is go into that menu and change the single shot to the 2-second self-timer. What this does is the camera will take a picture 2 seconds after you press the shutter button. That removes you wiggling the camera and causing additional blurriness. Now, if we wanted to be really careful, we could also enable mirror lockup in the custom functions. We're not going to do that. But that really is only necessary when you're shooting actually kind of between 1/10 of a second and 1 second. But slower than that, which we are now at 2.5, it's fine, and faster than that is fine as well. Mirror lockup is where most of the noise comes from when you take a picture, and it's the big mirror flipping out of the way, and that causes a lot of vibration in the camera, and again can introduce blurriness to your picture. So I'm going to turn live view back on now though, and I'm going to take a shot. Now it's not going to take it right away. It counted for 2 seconds and then it took the shot, so the camera was very stable. And then there's my picture. Let's press play. And that looks pretty nice. Now, as I said, I have a circular polarizer on the front of this, which is cutting down additional light. If I didn't have that, I still would be in the realm of shutter speeds that really didn't give me the blurriness. So I'm using these sunglasses. Not only does it cut down on the light, but it can cut down on the amount of reflection too. I'm slowly rotating the circular polarizer up here on the front. You can see my fingers getting in the way a little bit. And there is an area where you can see that there's more reflection. See that change? And less reflection. I like a little bit less. Always rotate it to the left too, so that you don't rotate it and the whole thing rotates and falls off into the water. Not that I would know anything about that. I'm also going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to rotate. As I said, I'm a little limited in my composition, but you can all still see that. It's a little bit bright on the back of the camera, I believe. So I'm going to go Menu, go to my LCD brightness, which was turned way up. There we go. I think that's a better look for you. There we go. And let me zoom out just a little bit. Got my focus. Oh, I lied about being in autofocus. I have continuous focus off, but it is still in autofocus with back button focusing. Again, really nice. I get that focus, and then when I press the shutters button, it doesn't try to refocus. So that's the back button autofocus. So it's a little bit overexposed, and I could come up with my aperture a little bit. How high can we go in aperture? Well, we can go all the way up to 32. And then we could go all the way to 15 seconds. And for 15 seconds, the shutter would be open. But you start to suffer some diffraction issues when you have that really tiny aperture. So you really want to avoid that. I try not to go above f/18, f/16. It depends somewhat on the lens. Honestly, you probably wouldn't see any difference in this picture. So where are we if we shoot for... There we go, 8 seconds. So I'm going to shoot at f/20. That gives me 8 full seconds. It's going to take 2 before it takes the picture. And now the shutter's going to stay open for about 8 seconds. And we're going to see the difference here. 8 seconds is going to give you that really smooth water. All of that water is moving. It's being captured. And there we go. Very smooth picture. And it's a little bit even underexposed. Again, I don't know if you saw, I am shooting both RAW and large JPEG. Right there, which gives me a lot of exposure latitude when I bring this back into Lightroom. So that was a look at shooting a slower exposure shot to get blurry water. That can be applied to a variety of subjects though, from car lights on a road to, gosh, I don't know what else. I can't think of anything else right now, but there are other things. And you can, of course, do this with people, too, and pan with them. But that's a whole nother topic, panning and getting some motion blur with people as well. I'm going to take just a few more shots while I'm here because this is such a pretty spot. And I will be sharing these maybe right now as I'm talking.